I have a secret to share with you all. The most powerful business growth tool isn't fancy and flashy ads or viral reels. It really is having raw, unfiltered conversations behind a microphone. I know, shocking, right? Really, there's no other time where you have so much of your audience's attention that you're able to get your word out, share your message, connect with them. And really, that just comes down to having a podcast. And today, my guest, Jess Martin, is talking all about that. She is the host of the Abundant and Aligned podcast, and it really became the backbone of her brand, helping her build her community, selling with ease, and scaling to a freedom filled business. And honestly, she started with her iPhone. In this episode, we talk about the transformation her podcast has taken because the podcast she has now has a different audience and message than it did when she first started. Because as she grew as a business owner, her podcast grew with her. But as I mentioned, it has always been the backbone of her brand. So let's get right into this episode with Jess Martin. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe, where we're serving up everything you need to know about podcasting, from tips, stories, and strategies for podcasters from podcasters. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency helping business owners, creatives, and thought leaders launch and grow their shows. Whether you're just starting out or want to take your podcast to the next level, this is the place for you. Each week, we'll dive into practical tips, actionable strategies, and of course, stories from other podcasters so that you can build up a podcast that you love and that works for your business. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get started. Welcome to the Podcast Cafe. Hey Jess, thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I am thrilled to be chatting with you today.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm very excited for our conversation today.
Yes. So you were a guest on my other podcast, Employee to Boss, and that's really how we connected. And then we've just been in each other's worlds and, you just got engaged and we were just talking about that before we pressed record. So you have a lot of new stuff coming in your life. And then in your business, you have tons of new stuff as well, such as masterminds. But we're going to get all into that. And I'm just thrilled to be chatting with you about all these things.
Yes, a big year, but I'm excited to unpack it with you.
Definitely. So before we talk about your podcast, since we are in the Podcast Cafe, what is your go-to coffee order?
Long black. I'm a very basic girl. Yeah,
I love black. That. I love that. No, I just classic for sure.
Yep. Funny, I go to the cafes with my friends and order their coffees and it's like a mile long of all the things they get. And then it comes to mine. I'm like, just a long black for me, please. Like, oh, amazing.
So funny. No, I love that. Very classic. Awesome. Well, since we got that out of the way, I'd love to hear more about your podcast and really just what do you talk about on there? Why'd you start it? Just the backstory of your show.
So firstly, I love my podcast and I'm the biggest advocate of podcasts. So I love that you've created this platform to help other podcasters grow a podcast because it's been such a powerful marketing avenue in my business, but also just a really powerful way to connect with my community. I feel like there's only so much we can do on Instagram before the message gets lost. Obviously, in this day and age as well, like reels trend when they're 4 seconds long. So you cannot get anything across in 4 seconds. So I love my podcast to get behind the mic and chat and share everything that I want to share with my community. So love podcasts, created my podcast for that reason really, just wanted a longer format to connect with my community. I'm a chatty person, so I knew that I would be able to stay consistent with my podcast. Content for me on Instagram is actually really time consuming, whereas the podcast I feel is such an easy way just to, again, share my knowledge, share what I'm doing in my own life simply by just getting behind the mic and recording. So starting my podcast was a no-brainer for me. When I started my business, it was one of the first things that I did, again, because I wanted a way to connect with my audience deeper and just have a chat with them. So yeah, it's been a huge success in my business. And again, 100% recommend it to everybody who does have a business, but even just people who want a way to connect with people. It's such a powerful platform.
Absolutely. It definitely is. And to be cheesy, like it's definitely brought you a lot of abundance and alignment. So
Yeah.
the name of your podcast is very telling to, what you're talking about, but also the results that you're seeing with just starting this. And you've had it since 2021, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a while now. So how did you come up with the name Abundant and Aligned?
Yeah, so it was a project. I wanted a name that would encapsulate everything that I wanted to talk about on the podcast.
Mhm.
And I am a mindset coach, but I knew I wanted to talk about female empowerment. We have episodes about your menstrual cycle, boundaries, not being a people pleaser. So, again, I wanted something that would include all of the topics that I wanted to chat about. So, yeah, it was just like brainstorming, sitting there, just throwing around ideas. I didn't want to use my name because being a new podcaster, no one knows who you are, no one cares who you are. So I wanted a name that would like really stand out to people and portray the message that I was going to share with them. So yeah, it honestly was a bit of a project. A few weeks in the making actually of just like bouncing around different names, and yeah, then we landed with Abundant and Aligned.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great name, and I like how you put the and as a plus sign. I don't know, I just like those little details of it all for sure. So, what I love about your story is you have this background in law and
Mm,
decided you no longer wanted to do that and you wanted to do something more aligned, and then started this mindset business. And that it wasn't just like, point A to point B. There was obviously a journey between there. So, like you said, like you're definitely building this community through your podcast. But what was it really that made you decide a podcast was the first type of marketing that you wanted to focus on?
Again, I had so much I needed to share with my community for them to understand why I was here.
Mhm.
As you mentioned, has been a big journey for me to get here. I was a lawyer in 2018, come to the realization that it wasn't a career that I wanted. I jumped into network marketing. I did that for a couple of years. That business wasn't a huge success financially, but I poured so much into it. So after 2.5 years of working so hard with not a lot to show, I had to take a step back and do a lot of my own inner work. And then what followed was a year of personal growth, really understanding the subconscious mind. So I just had a lot I needed to share with my people. And it was really important for me that they understood what really went into the success that I had created. And it wasn't a matter of just start a business and off you go. Like for me, there was a lot of inner work that needed to happen for me to create the success that I have today. So it was really important that I was having those honest, raw conversations about what it really takes. And my community are the everyday woman that grew up in an average household. Their parents went to jobs, they didn't have luxury and overflow. So while they want that today, it's really important that we talk about that because that's often the block as to why they are struggling to achieve the goals. So, again, I wanted a platform where I could feel comfortable opening up about all of that kind of stuff and get that message across, again, in a way that Instagram just doesn't allow for us to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And I find that a lot of podcasters, that's what they find. Like, yes, you're doing this to help other people, but at the same time, you get to have these amazing conversations with amazing guests. And
Mm,
I know a ton of the advice that I've learned on my past podcast and even this podcast. Like, these are questions I'm curious about. And so I'm learning along with the listeners. And I love being nosy and curious. And so it's just like the perfect way to get those really deep answers from people that, yeah, like you said, you're not going to figure out why someone started their business from a reel, like a
yeah.
90-second reel,
Yeah.
or even if they go live on Instagram. Sure, that might be impactful for like a little bit, but people are eventually going to have to scroll and scroll and scroll to find it. And so podcasts are around forever. The longevity of them is way different than any other platform around.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like it's a different way to learn and listen as well. Like you said, like if you do Instagram lives, yeah, you could chat for 30 minutes or whatever you want, but people when they're on the app aren't in a space to be listening to something for 30 minutes. Where
Yeah.
again, like a podcast, when we put a podcast on, we know we're locked in for the next 30 to 40 minutes. We're here for it and we can bring a podcast along with us on our walk, down at the beach, while we're cleaning our house. So again, it gives people the opportunity to stay plugged into you without them sitting in their office behind a desk, like just like watching their phone.
For sure. For sure. So, since you have had your podcast for years now, I'd love to hear about the evolution of it from, what you used to talk about day one, which might be the same as what you talk about now. But can you talk about how our podcasts are allowed to change with us, and especially with your business? And I want to get more into how your business is evolving and, creating new offers. So, how does your podcast evolve with yourself and your brand?
Yeah, it definitely has come along for the ride, my podcast. And if you go and listen to the episodes when I first launched, I was still working as a lawyer, quite new to my personal development brand. So I was talking about navigating that part of my life, juggling business with going to a full-time job, the mindset hurdles that I was overcoming then. But earlier days, it was probably more of like a mindset manifestation podcast. But now, as my business has evolved, I work with a lot of women in business. So we're having more business orientated conversations, tying it back though to mindset and the subconscious mind, because I could sit and talk about that all day long. So it's evolved with my clients, I guess. Like the audience that I'm serving has shifted over the years. So my podcast is serving them and having conversations that help them. So I guess like the audience has probably shifted from those who are new to the personal development world and want to learn how to journal and understand what meditation is, evolve from kind of the newcomers to those who are probably a little bit further on in their journey. They have a business and they really need that help to grow their business using the power of mindset and the subconscious mind. So yeah, it's evolved in that way. Also, the guests that we have on the show are evolving as well, and we're getting obviously like bigger guests and things like that the more the show grows. So yeah, definitely the topics we're talking about, the caliber of people that are listening, or I guess where they're at when they're listening, has definitely changed over the years. And I love what you said around being okay about that. When you start a podcast, because I've got clients who start podcasts and sometimes they overthink what their podcast is going to be like for the next 5 years. And I'm like, that is going to change so much. And that's the cool thing about having your own show. Like you get to decide what you're talking about and you could shift completely if you wanted. And I always encourage that because we want our podcast to be an extension of us. And if you're talking about topics that are really relevant to you, it makes podcasting so much easier. Whereas if you chose a category when you first started and you're not even interested in that category anymore, naturally it's going to be so much harder to show up in that way. So yeah, it should be an extension of you and your life and what you're focusing on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Whenever I help someone start a podcast, I'm never like, what do you want to do in 5 years with this? I always think about what goals do you want to achieve? Like, where do you want to be in 5 years? But your podcast can shift along the way. I have a client who has a background as a financial advisor, and she had a TV show, and they're very regulated in what they say as a financial advisor. You probably know this from having a similar lawyer background. And so when she started her podcast, she was like, I want to talk about whatever I want to talk about. Like no regulations, just whatever I want to talk about is what I'm talking about. So obviously, that's how she started. We've shifted a little bit to have more of a strategy now, but yeah, it could be whatever you want. It really can.
Yeah. And I think because of that, it does really allow for those really raw and honest conversations that, again, we're probably not having on those other apps.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. I want to talk more about these raw and honest conversations that you're having because, a lot of podcasts want to have those. They really do. But not a lot of podcasts can hold space for that in the interview. And I'm sure this is something that you've, gotten more used to over time, but like some people are afraid to have emotions on their show or even just these thought-provoking conversations because they're like, oh, what will they think, So how do you hold spaces for these bigger, raw and honest conversations on your show?
I think one, it's the energy of the host. So when I start my podcasts interviews, I create that energy within the interview of like, this is a safe place and let's share your story and let's get it out to the world. And I guess just creating that from the get-go, making them feel comfortable and that they can open up, giving them a bit of an indication in terms of like, this is what my show's about. So if you come on and you're super emotional and raw, you're not going to be the first one on my show that's done this. Like these are the conversations we're having. So again, it just gives them that permission to open up and be that voice. Holding space, I think, again, it's always been really important for me that we are having these honest conversations. And again, like the more I open up as a host on those interviews, it allows them to do the same. So it's really important for me that all of my episodes are as if we've gone for a wine together and we're catching up as like friends that have known each other for years. So again, like just creating that vibe with the person I'm interviewing, but also within my show, I think naturally just allows those conversations to flow. So yeah, and I think like the way I interview as well, it's always very casual. Again, just like creating a very comfortable space for them to open up, and it's worked. And because of that, we do have some very raw and honest conversations on the podcast, which I'm very proud of.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about that? I want to talk more about how you talk about your experiences in your podcast too, because again, that's a place that I think hosts don't know, like, can I talk about myself on this, or is this all about my guest?
Yeah. Like of course you can. I don't know why when it comes to my podcast, like when I'm podcasting, I can open up in a way that I can't do on Instagram, and I don't know why. I guess I do record, like I do film myself, so I don't know why. It's just like a different dynamic. Yeah. I feel like if you open up on Instagram, there's always like this little fear that people are just going to attack you or call you out, but I don't have that feeling when it comes to my podcast, and that's just something I've had from the get-go. So I think it's just something that I've always felt comfortable doing, is just opening up more. Again, I don't know, maybe it's because we are just sitting behind the mic in our office and it just feels more of a safe zone. But as for like feeling okay about storytelling when I am interviewing my guests, that conversation is just so powerful. If we're just interviewing someone, it's just like all about them. That one-way conversation as a listener isn't as nice to listen to. Again, like I want my conversations to feel like we're having a wine and we're just like catching up. And if you are having a wine with one of the girls, it's not just one person talking the whole time. It's like bouncing back from that conversation. So again, that's the experience I want to give my listeners. So if one of my interview people say something and I've got something to contribute, I will contribute as opposed to just flicking through the questions, because again, for a listener, it's nice to have that two-way conversation.
Absolutely. And your listeners are coming because they like you. You know, the guests rotate every week, but you're the constant. And so they want to know more about who you are. And especially since you use this as like a brand building platform, of course, you're going to want your listeners to know about you. So then they feel more connected to you if they ever decide to go into your coaching or masterminds or buy a course of yours.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because I go through phases where I'm like, surely they're sick of hearing about my story and where I've come from. But whenever we go back and look at the numbers, when like either solo episodes or episodes where I have, you know, really opened up with the person I'm interviewing, are always the most popular episodes. So, as you said, it's a personal brand and people are here to listen to me and learn from me. And so if you do have a personal brand, people are here for that. And I know it's really easy to assume that they're sick of hearing from you and your story, but they wouldn't be listening to your show if they were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you ever feel self-conscious about that, as you know, the listeners of the episode, like, don't. Because if they didn't like you, they just wouldn't listen. And that's just the truth. And that's how we want it to be.
Yeah. And like you said before, humans are so nosy. Like we want to know everything. Like share it all.
Yeah. It also gives more of that vibe of like, oh my gosh, I just heard this on this podcast. Listen, it lets them talk about it with their friends if they're actually at wine with their friends. And so I mean, this is the world. I'm always in the podcasting world, but I do really like it when I'm able to take what my clients talk about or another podcast episode that I'm listening to and put that into conversation where it's relevant. So the more open you can be, the better. We want people talking about our shows.
That's so true. Yeah. Free marketing.
Yeah, definitely. So can you tell us more about how your podcast connects to your business? Like if you run ads, or what funnels you have in place to get your listeners to engage with you more, maybe not even buy, but just come and connect with you on a deeper level.
Yeah. So the way that my business is set up is we do live launches all throughout the year, whether it's the Academy, which is my life transformation program, or my mastermind called Her Empire. And so depending on what we are launching, there will be a correlation over on the podcast. So actually, I also have a money manifestation program called the Wealthy Woman. So that's probably the easiest to explain. So prior to that launch, for example, that program is all about money. So just prior to that launch, for about a month before, we did a money series on the podcast where we're just talking about like manifesting money. And so I was driving traffic to the podcast, getting everyone to listen to that series. And then throughout that series, I was also talking about the Wealthy Woman and plugging in some ads about that program that I just record myself. So yeah, doing things like that just prior to opening up my business mastermind. We did a build to 100K series. So there is always like a series happening on the podcast that correlates to whatever I'm launching at the time and whatever I'm talking about over on Instagram. So I find that is a really powerful way to bring people in, whether they join that round or the next round. It's opening up the conversation that does filter them or at least lead them into those programs. So yeah, the podcast is a huge marketing avenue for me into all of my programs and openings, even for free stuff that we're doing. So at the start of the year, we do a New Year boot camp, which is a free event. Again, on the podcast, we're talking about New Year goals and setting new intentions for the year. It always matches up with what we're doing. I also bring guests on that match whatever we're launching about. So yeah, just prior to the launch of the Wealthy Woman, bringing on clients who have been in that program and getting them to share their testimonial, business clients when we're doing her empire, etc. So yeah, I really lean on the podcast for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I love that because that really goes into knowing what your audience wants and who your audience is, more importantly. Because, you know, if they are wanting to learn more about money, it totally makes sense to have a money series leading up to your launch. And if you're launching multiple times a year and someone lands on one of those money topics, they can come and connect with you on Instagram and see that you're doing it maybe a month later or whatever your routine is. But yeah, definitely knowing who your audience is plays a big role in being able to sell to them like that.
Yeah. And it just provides that really organic way to talk about your program as well. Instead of just talking about the program, it's like, here's why the program's so powerful. I'm going to talk about my program, but also give you a bunch of value in this episode. Even if you don't decide to join the program, you've still walked away with a lot of value in terms of money mindset or starting a business or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's a really organic way to sell your program, but also provide value at the same time, where it's a win-win. Again, either they join the program or at least they've learned something new.
Yeah, definitely. And who are your listeners typically?
So women in business is where we're at now. Again, at the start, it was probably more those women that were in corporate roles, because that's where I was, wanting to change their life, step out of the mold and manifest, you know, what they want. But yeah, more so women in business now. And that's just probably been a shift over the years that I've made. My overarching value in my business is freedom, and I want to help women have more freedom. So time freedom, location freedom, financial freedom, freedom within themselves. And it just happens to be that women in business kind of fit that, because we can create a sense of freedom in a business more so than what we can when we're having to go to a corporate job. So they would be usually women in business now, but I still come in every now and then and provide episodes that are more general, and they always perform really well. So it goes to show there are probably women still listening that just want to know about the subconscious mind and manifestation and how we can be a creator. And while maybe one episode is talking about business, there's still so much in there that you can apply to getting a promotion at work, finding the love of your life, just having more money generally.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just had to pop in here and talk about my podcast audits. This is an offer that has historically only been for my private clients where I'm doing their monthly production and editing, but I have actually just opened this up to more podcasters where you can come to me and get a quarterly audit of your podcast. This is a time dedicated to your podcast and your business growth. So, what this looks like is we go into your podcast, we look at what you've been doing, what trends there are, what's working, what's not, and make a detailed plan of what to do in the next 3 months to move forward with your podcast so it actually brings you the results that you're looking for. If you're looking for new clients, are you getting that through your podcast? If you're looking to build trust, are you getting that through your podcast? If you're looking to build community, is that what you're accomplishing with your podcast? Far too many times I see podcasters put in so much effort, but it doesn't pay off because they don't look at the analytics, they don't look at the stats, they don't look at what they're doing. Now, that's why I'm offering this for any podcaster who's using their podcast to build their brand or business. So, if you're interested, send me an email, hello at Espresso Podcast Production, and we will set your date to look at the details of your podcast. It is $1,200 for the podcast. If you break that down, it's about $400 a month or $100 an episode, which if you spent $100 every single week to make your podcast actually move in the right direction, meaning every episode is pushing you forward to the next spot that you want to be, it is so, so worth it. You will no longer be just posting and praying. You will have a detailed strategy to move your business and your podcast forward. So again, if you're interested, hello at espressopodcastproduction.com, and let's get that all started for you. And I like how you bring this all back to checking the analytics and seeing what's working. That's so important. So what do you normally track?
So I actually was just looking the other day. The episode that is performing the best right now is how to get out of a rut. And that's amazing. Like, people like want to get out of a rut. But I don't want to just talk about being in a rut all the time and like, you know, really like channeling the victim. So like, just because that's performing, I don't want to keep creating episodes about like how to get out of a rut and like, you know, does that make sense? So I look at my numbers out of curiosity, and like it will guide me to some point, but I still like to come in and just provide the listeners with what I think they want. Like, my favorite quote from Ford is, if I had have asked my people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So sometimes as the host, we need to guide them to a place that maybe they didn't even realize they needed to go. So yes, I look at the episode stats and it will guide me to an extent, but if I'm not feeling called to continue to talk about a topic like that, then I won't. And I'll keep, you know, talking about topics that I'm really fired up and passionate about at the time. But yeah, stats wise, just looking at the downloads, looking at where they're coming from is really important for us, because more recently we're doing in-person events. So getting an idea about where the audience is location wise is something that we can use in other parts of my business to set up events and things like that. So yeah, they're the two stats that I do track.
Yeah, I love that. Of course, we want to do what works, but I always look at it as like, if I do a solo episode and it gets so many more views than my guest episodes, I'm not going to stop doing guest episodes. I'm just going to maybe incorporate an extra solo episode a month. So kind of using it like that, rather than like, oh my gosh, my audience loves this one topic, I'm going to go so hard on this topic till they're sick of it, right? Because that's going to be the death of the podcast, honestly.
Yeah. And also it's difficult as a host as well. Like, if you, as I said, have this burning topic that you want to be talking about, but maybe your audience are wanting to listen to a different topic, like if you just gave them what you wanted, it makes showing up as a host not as fun, because like, again, the purpose of our podcast is to sit here and talk about topics that are relevant to us, things we're passionate about. It makes podcasting so much easier if it's something that's sitting on your heart and something you want to get off your chest. So I think, yeah, like having that balance is really important. Like, of course, you want to show up for your community and give them what they want, but also ensuring that you're having fun and you're talking about topics that you love, because that energy is what gets across.
Yes, 100%, 100%. Well, I've loved this conversation so far about, you know, your topic and holding space for these big conversations, and then even how you tie it to your business. I'd love, before we get into our rapid fire section, just to hear any tips you have for podcasters.
I think definitely remember that it is a way to connect with your community in a really honest and raw way. And I encourage those honest and raw conversations. Just start. So when I started my podcast, I literally did it from my phone. Like, I don't even know the app. It would have just been some free app on your iPhone, and my microphone was my phone. So don't feel like you have to have all of the fancy equipment and the podcast studio before you can start sharing your message with the world using podcasts. If you can, get good equipment as soon as possible, because it does help. But if you can't at the moment, like, you can still start a podcast show. And I think just have fun with it. Don't try and plan too much, because I love one of your questions. We'll probably get to that, like your pet peeve in the podcast world. And for me, it is the really structured, the really edited. You can kind of tell they're reading from a script.
Yes.
So just like loosen up, like
Yeah.
have a glass of wine if you need to, bring some guests on if that's going to like ease your nerves so that it is this beautiful flowy conversation, because I'm sure you guys would agree, like they're the shows that you love to listen to, like the really organic, just casual, just like people sitting there and sharing their life. So yeah, like practice obviously will help with the nerves, and like talking to a microphone can be kind of weird at first, but practice makes perfect and you will eventually get there. So yeah, raw conversations, just start and try and make this as fun and lighthearted as you possibly can, and find a way to really create that energy with your community of like you are having a wine with them and just having a chat.
Yeah. Yeah. I love those. Those are really great tips. And I don't know if you felt this way too, but we both started, I started my podcast journey in 2018. So before the video rise came about. And I felt like almost when I started doing solo video podcasts, it was kind of like I was starting over from day one again. I was
Yeah.
like, this is so
Yeah.
awkward.
Yes. We have been trying to record mine more, like the video,
Yeah.
and I've noticed that I'm less inclined to record.
Hmm.
And I know there's a lot of power in like the video aspect to podcasting. So I am trying to persist with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting you say that. It definitely has changed the dynamic a little bit for me. So yeah, it does. It feels like you're starting from scratch and just getting used to a camera just staring at you. You've got to watch your expressions
Hmm.
more and how you're sitting. I'm always like slunched over, like I have like a double chin. So I'm like, all right, sit up, put your shoulders back. People are watching you now.
That's so real. I would like watch my back and I'd be staring out the window, like off the side of my,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what am I looking at? I don't
Yes,
know.
literally.
It's so,
Yeah, like your focus face is like, yeah, I do the exact same.
yeah.
So, and now I try and put the camera in front of me. I'm like, all right, imagine that there's someone sitting there.
Hmm.
Because, yeah, otherwise I'm like looking off and making the weirdest faces.
No, exactly.
So we're all learning.
We are. No, I absolutely love those tips. Is there anything else you want to share before we get into rapid fire?
I think just start a podcast, like especially if you have a business. I know a lot of fear that comes up within my community is, but no one, I don't have a big enough audience, or there's so many podcast shows out there. There's so much competition, but there's something about your voice that people want to hear. And even if you don't have millions of downloads and you're not ranking, there's still people that are going to listen to you. And again, it's such a powerful way to connect with those people. So I encourage everyone in business to start a podcast, especially with the way Instagram is. Like, I'm sure you all agree, it's such a frustrating app. Like, with the algorithm changing and knowing not every piece of content gets to your people, no
Hmm.
matter how consistent you are, podcasting is a way where once a week, people are plugging in and they're listening to you, and you can guarantee that it's getting in front of people. So for a long form format, podcasting is 100% the way to go. And again, yes, there's so many shows out there, but there's something unique about you and your voice and what you're here to share. And you've got to start somewhere. Yeah, of course, you're not going to have many listens at the start, but we all started there.
Hmm.
But with consistency and showing up in a way that people love to hear from you, it will grow, and you've just got to ride the wave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Jess, that was so beautifully said. I 1000% agree with every single word. So, no,
You're
that's
like, amen.
so true. So, so true. No, I think that's a really great way to, yeah, just, we're not all perfect from the beginning. And if you go and listen to my episodes from day one, oh my gosh, I sound like a whole different person. And like,
Yeah.
as I should, we get better at anything that we do for long periods of time. So the longer you wait, the longer it's going to take you to really reach that success.
Yeah. I actually learned a stat the other day, and it only takes 20 hours to learn a new skill. But the issue is people put that first hour off for years and years and years. So
Yeah.
the podcasting world, give it 20 hours and you'll be better than your first hour and more skilled as a podcaster. But you've got to start. You've got to start messy. You've got to start kind of sucky at first, and it will get better. Like, I was the same. Like, my voice is so high pitched and squeaky. And as I said, I was doing it from my phone. So the quality was not great, but it's funny the amount of people that reach out and still talk about that episode. Because in the episode, I say, by the way, guys, I'm sitting in my kitchen recording from my phone. The amount of people that still message and say that is really inspiring, because again, like it's just hearing from women who just started messy, imperfect, and just made it work. And they've seen the evolution of my show, but I had to start there. So it inspires people. So yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. I love that. Thanks so much for sharing that. All right. Well, I have 8 questions for you for a rapid fire. I need to come up with a better way to call it than rapid fire because I'm like a slow fire kind of. I'm chatty. I'm a yapper. I don't know what to say. And
At
so,
least not quick.
all right. So, my first question for you is what's the first podcast you ever listened to?
So it is Kimberly Wenya show. It's a manifestation podcast, and I actually should reach out and let her know that she has literally just changed my life. But yeah, the Kimberly Wenya show, it's all about manifestation. That's what got me into the world of manifestation. That's what got me curious about having online programs. And yeah, it was the start of it all for me.
I
I don't
love
think
it.
she podcasts anymore. It's still available, but I don't think she's active on there. But go and find her show. It's really good.
Okay. I'll definitely put it in the show notes. Okay.
Yeah.
My second question for you is what's your favorite genre of podcast besides your own?
Yeah, so I am such a personal development nerd, and honestly, I just listen to personal development most of the time, but I was trying to think. I dip into more of the business podcast, so more of like the operations, like the systems you can implement, customer service, that kind of stuff. But if we are on a road trip, I don't mind a crime genre.
Yeah.
The crime podcasts are our road trip listen. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. I love that. Okay. My third question is do you have any dream podcast guests?
So, I mean, the list could go on and on and on. Dr. Joe Dispenza has been huge within my business and the message that I have in all of my programs and offers, all about the subconscious mind. So he would be like a dream. I would love to interview him one day. But as for someone a little bit closer, I love bringing on women in business to just share their story and their journey. Someone that I love and who is an inspiration to me, we'll talk about this at the start, is Monica Yates. I'd love to get her on. The Manifestation Babe is also someone that's been huge in my personal journey. So to get her on the show would be pretty cool as well. So watch this space.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. What is one podcast that you'd recommend everyone listen to?
It's like someone else's.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Manifestation Babe is a cool podcast. I love that. And she's still very active, Catherine Zenkina. So if you are into manifestation and want to learn more about it, that's definitely one that I would recommend. I do love Monica Yates' podcast as well, though, Feminine as Fuck. That's good for a female empowerment. And again, she has lots of different topics in there. So it'd have to be those two.
She really does. I want to have her on this podcast so bad because
Yeah.
she balances it all so well. Like she has business episodes, but then she also has mindset and self-development and then just like her chatting. I don't know.
Yeah.
I really will get into like the pet peeves that we both have about podcasting. One of my pet peeves is like when people have side conversations in podcasts, but she can do it and I'm like, I love it.
Yeah. Be eating and drinking. And yeah, I'm the same. I'm like, it doesn't annoy me when she does
Right.
it because she does it well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your favorite podcast listening platform?
Apple. I'm an Apple girl.
Okay. Love.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone hates that. Like, what do you mean you don't listen to your podcast episodes on Spotify or music on Spotify?
Yeah.
I've just always been an Apple girl. So yeah.
I love that. I'm a Spotify listener. Sorry.
Yeah. See, and a lot of people are. I don't know why I've never transitioned, but yeah.
I mean, Apple Works, I use that. I mean, I like that more for business because people can leave reviews and people can't do that on Spotify. But I think as of recently, people can leave comments kind of like YouTube on Spotify now. So I think that's
That's good to know.
yeah.
That. Yeah, I agree. It was, you could only get like a star rating on Spotify before.
Right.
So that's good to know.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I know you already mentioned one, but what are your biggest pet peeves when it comes to being a podcast listener?
Yeah, I think just too scripted and too edited. Like, I know people can edit the long pauses and whatever, but I leave the ums and ahs in my podcast because, again, if we're having wine, we're not editing out the ums and ahs. So yeah, a podcast that is too scripted and too edited that it feels like I'm listening to a production as opposed to a conversation.
Definitely. I agree with that. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received about podcasting?
Consistency, obviously, showing up for your audience. My episodes are weekly, usually on a Monday, but as I'm getting further along in my business and I'm trying to loosen up a little bit, if I get it out on a Wednesday, I'm okay about that. But definitely consistency and whatever that looks like for you. If it's weekly, if it's fortnightly, if it's monthly, just being consistent so that your audience can expect that time frame from you. The next one would be getting guests on the show and getting them to share it on their Instagram platform, and also getting on their show as well. So bringing people on yours, but also getting on their show, because it's a free way, a very organic way to get in front of other people's audiences, whether they're sharing it on their Instagram or you're actually on their podcast show. So that's something I've always done from day one, is pitching to other podcasts, bringing women onto mine, and just having that collaboration is really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I love a podcast swap, and I think it's a lot easier to do when you do have a podcast, be on other people's, because do you want to be on mine? I'd love to be on yours. And yeah, so I love that. Okay, I have one last question for you. What is the most surprising thing that you've learned about yourself from podcasting?
Oh, sometimes I have breakthroughs on my podcast when, like I said, a lot of what I share is things that I've navigated in my own life and kind of where things originated from. So if I'm having a money mindset block, really unpacking where that started in my childhood. So yeah, the breakthroughs I have when I'm like having these conversations on my show and I'm like, oh my God, I've just realized that that's where it's come from, or this is where it started. So I guess like the amount of realizations you have when you just start talking and getting things off your chest, you just go down this rabbit hole. So like my own growth from just chatting about it on my podcast is something that has surprised me, because it's even got me thinking about things when I get them to think about things.
Definitely. Oh, I love that. Thanks so much for joining me, Jess. I'd love to hear what's next for you and what's next for your podcast.
Podcasting, I want to bring on some really big guests over the next year or so. So really focusing on that. We've ranked in the top charts a few times, but I want to be consistent with the ranking. So that's definitely a goal. We're going to be doing some new intros and just kind of like not doing a huge rebrand, but just a little mini rebrand, because the show has been around now for 3 years, so just spicing it up a little bit. In terms of my world, we are moving towards 7 figures is my next big milestone. So there'll be lots of conversations on the podcast about my journey to 7 figures and just tying that back into what I'm doing with my clients, just going bigger, and I'm really excited for it.
Oh, I'm so excited for you too. Do you want to give us a little preview of what your mastermind is like?
Yes, so it is for women in business who are ready to move to the next level in business, whatever that looks like. You could be earning 10K months and want to go to 20. Maybe you're still working in your job and you want to take the business full time. It is limited, super intimate, super supportive. We hang out for 6 months and really just focus on all aspects of business. So I take care of the mindset, the subconscious mind, and then I bring in a panel of women who can help with marketing, women's health, podcasting, Instagram, affiliate marketing. Covers all bases, which I love about my mastermind, because that's come up throughout this episode. It's really important for me to ensure that women have everything. They have access to everything. So my mastermind is that. And if you're listening to this at the time of recording, there's only a couple of spots. So if that interests you, definitely send me a DM and we can have a chat.
Perfect. And where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Instagram for sure, which is Jess Martin __.
Amazing. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll put all of those in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me. I've learned a lot from you in this episode, and I've just had a great time reconnecting and chatting.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me in the Podcast Cafe. I hope you're leaving with fresh ideas and inspiration to take your podcast to the next level. Remember, podcasting is a journey and you don't have to do it alone. I'm here to help you every step of the way. Let's connect. Be sure you follow me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production, or visit espressopodcastproduction.com for more tips, resources, and behind-the-scenes insights. I'd love to hear about your podcasting journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling extra generous, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps more podcasters just like you find the show. Until next time, grab your coffee, keep creating, and I'll see you back here in the Podcast Cafe.